Hello and welcome to Full Disclosure, a podcast project, and this is the spiel I normally open an episode with, designed to allow me to spend more time with interesting people than I would ever get on the radio. But Alexander Armstrong, this is a bit different because I actually see you every day.
Every morning.
Most people, because they'll be listening to me on LBC between 10 a.m. and 1 p.m, won't be aware that you present a rival programme on Classic FM at exactly the same time.
A partner programme.
Sister.
That's what it
brother.
is. Sister, brother programme. Yeah. Every morning, without fail, because I have to go in and I have to pre-record one tiny little bit, because we have one link where the ads go two different ways. So we call it a split link, and that one little link has to be pre-recorded. So I go in and then come out of the studio about 4 minutes before my show starts, and invariably slap into you with about a bucket full of tea.
My enormous mug.
Enormous mug of tea, and and we exchange curt greetings.
We have cheery greetings, and then almost always I'll see you later in the day on the telly. It did occur to me that there must be more than 24 hours in your average day.
I think I've worked it out. What I have to start doing is working when I lie awake at night for 3 hours, which I just do every night as a matter of course. Maybe it's age. I don't know. What I should be doing is getting up and working then, actually.
Doing a bit more on your next book, perhaps, which we'll talk about the latest one imminently. But we begin at the beginning. I mean, it's an overused word, but your childhood sounds relatively idyllic.
I think it probably was. It was. I look hard for dark clouds in there, and it was pretty wonderful. We grew up in Northumberland. My father was a doctor, rural GP, a very uncomplaining, very loving, and indeed loved man. Right at the heart of our village, we lived in this beautiful village. We're just outside it, Rothbury in Northumberland, nestled sort of in the moorlands, and it was pretty perfect.
How many siblings?
Two.
And
two, older than me.
Oh, okay.
Older than me, 4.5 years older, 3 years older, and you get lots of benefits from that being the youngest, in that you are spot rotten, and obviously you're allowed privileges many years before they were, and you always just have to bat away and say, well, I wasn't allowed to that way. I wasn't. And but you pay for it when you're in your teens and suddenly your siblings have all gone off to university, and school holidays.
A bit of loneliness kicks in.
Yeah, it's just you and the dogs, really.
Especially if you've gone away to school, because you don't have friends around the corner.
Yeah, well, that also we didn't have around the corner. We lived
in the middle of nowhere?
No, that makes it far too exciting. It wasn't nowhere near the middle of nowhere. It was sort of it was way off in the sort of top left-hand corner of nowhere. So we lived in a farm. It's about 4.5 miles out of the village.
Gosh.
So we were very isolated. I mean, I loved it. I did love it. And there were times of year when you just thought, this is heaven. In the summer, particularly, when the sun was out, you felt you were part of the world. When it was overcast, which in that part of Northumberland it is a lot, you feel much more isolated. Weirdly, I remember bringing my then girlfriend, now my wife, up to Northumberland for the first time, and just being so delighted that the sun shone, because it didn't feel like you were right out at the sort of butt end of absolutely nowhere.
Did you embrace nature?
I did embrace nature. Yes.
So you were into sort of creepy crawlies and animals and wildlife and all that sort of thing?
Yes. I mean, even if you weren't really necessarily into them, you had a very close relationship with them, and you had birds. And bird life around us was incredible.
It strikes me, because you're born in 1970, and you've described a sort of a geographical isolation, but the world was very different technologically as well. This childhood could have been lived in any of the sort of 3 or 4 previous decades, probably.
Oh, I thought you were going to say centuries. Actually, I think definitely.
But there'd have been a telly.
Definitely decades. Yeah, we had a telly. We did eventually get a colour telly.
Right.
When I remember that was in 1970 for the Jubilee. In 1977, we got a colour telly. It came from the Mart in Rothbury, and it had. I think it was an old school. You know how tellies in schools used to have doors and shutters and things. So it had these sort of concertina doors. But you're completely right. It was a childhood very. I mean, it was sheltered, but in a good and bad way. You know, we were wonderfully sheltered.
But were you missing anything? Were you conscious of, I don't know, Finder's French bread pizzas or trappings of modernity that would no,
not really. Right. No, I mean there were some.
Sure,
there were some things, and we were. I mean, there was some quite weird. I remember very clearly when aged 11, when I was 11, my sister sort of confessed to my older brother, that she really liked the Police. She was really into she'd just fallen in love with Sting and was into pop music. And I remember my brother just thinking, "You're what?" I mean, it was like something from a sort of Janet Winterson. No, it was from my older brother, going, "You what? You're into pop? Are you? Are you really?" And she sort of led the way, and I scampered in after her.
Gosh.
I became obsessed. I mean, that was the other thing. Living in the middle of nowhere, with nature and all of its bounty at our disposal, obviously, it allowed you to become obsessive.
Okay,
You really could
indulge in enthusiasm to the nth degree.
Yeah, absolutely. And so I did. But we were kind of from the 19th century.
Yeah, that's
in
what
a way.
I'm hearing.
There was something
in a nice way.
In a really nice way. And we were
yeah.
crackers as well, because we entertained ourselves. And my brother, who was sort of, I mean, he's my dearest friend, and he throws his head back and laughs about it now. But he's been sort of brought up on Walter Scott novels and Baroness Orczy and things like this, and he sort of lived in this mad sort of world of billowing white shirts. I mean, he saw himself as this Byronic hero. He announced one year, because we all had nicknames, because he gave us all nicknames, and he didn't have one. And I remember him one summer saying, "I should like to be known as Menelaus." and he's never been allowed to forget that. He's not known as Menelaus, nor has he ever been so.
I read when you were working with Ben Miller that you fell into the younger brother role as well. So there's a bit of repetition there, isn't there? There's a sort of...
Definitely there is. Yeah.
Circuit. What does that mean? Does it mean that you're waiting for someone else's lead, or?
Yeah, I think it does. I think it means, I mean, it's not, I don't think it's an attractive role, actually, when I say that. I think it's one where you are, it's weird. I mean, particularly if you've got the kind of older siblings I have that were very good at processing. They would do all the processing, and I would just sort of get the pre-chewed pap in a way from them. So anytime anything happened,
right, yes.
To this day, I don't really react to things until hours or days after things have happened. So when I take bad news with equanimity usually, and it'll be a long time later
during those 3-hour nighttime.
Yeah, usually, and then then I get it, and right. I'm sure that's a consequence of having I think very protective older siblings.
Oh, it's a form of emotional hand-me-downs almost.
It is exactly that. It's like everything I've ever. I'm surprised. It's so nice to wear trousers these days that don't have ladders.
The tide marks all going up the way. So when did popular culture, the Police notwithstanding, when did popular culture first? Because I mean, comedy would be the most obvious question to ask. When did comedy first sort of beat on your radar?
Popular culture came in the form of madness. That was my first obsession when I was 11. Absolutely, that was just everything for me. And then comedy when I was a little bit older. I think I was probably about 12 or 13. I remember my brother had got the Monty Python. I can't remember which album it was, but anyway, he suddenly a Monty Python album. That was a great time when you could buy albums.
Gatefold, wasn't it? Probably live at the Hollywood Bowl or something like that.
Whereas the one with the arm that wraps around it. It wasn't the contractual obligation. It was, I can't remember what it was called. Anyway, but it was... And of course, I listened to that obsessively. And the Beatles as well. My brother...
Did you do the voices and all that? Did you?
All of them, all the characters. And you'd learn these things off by heart because they were just... I don't know, you sort of sucked on these things because the sweetness of comedy was something... I mean, we grew up with on that colour TV behind its shutters. We would watch Dick Emery and the Two Ronnies, and and as a family we would sit and watch. I used to love not quite understanding necessarily all the jokes. In fact, probably about a fifth of the jokes. But I loved that everyone would laugh, and there'd be a laugh track on the thing just to tell you.
Communal.
That's lovely.
Don't really get that anymore, do you?
No.
All laughing at the same thing, all watching the same thing at the same time.
Sweet.
Yes,
it was. Very sweet thing. And
the first time you get a joke, like a grown-up joke, a joke that your dad, and you get it, it's a wonderful moment. You sort of think, I actually know that. I know why that's funny.
I worked that one out.
Yes, exactly that.
Yeah.
I love that. And lots of books.
Lots of books. Lots and lots of books. I mean, that was a wonderful thing to grow up in a house that had lots of books, lots of music as well. I was, classical music. I mean, interestingly, classical music, my love of classical music came Not because we were sort of schooled in classical music by any means, but because I was an insomniac. I always have been. I always wake up far too early.
Yeah.
I mean, and I'm always just sitting there drumming my fingers, waiting for everyone else to come downstairs. And so I just go and play with anything I wasn't allowed to play with in daylight hours. And that genuinely, I mean, if I had been able to find the key for the power drill bits, I'd have gone into that. But as it happened, I went for the record player and thought, right, I'm not allowed to play with this during the day. What do we got here? I can't even say that.
And they only had classical.
They had
music
classical records. I mean, yeah, kind of sort of Ella Fitzgerald and things like that. There were a few sort of things like that. But and Nina and Frederick. I don't know what that. Nina and Frederick was this sort of. Yeah, it was this sort of. I think very popular in the 60s.
Okay.
They were a sort of pop duo. Anyway,
it's almost like an experiment, that, isn't it? So a child in the 70s, if he was exposed early and only to classical music, would almost certainly develop a love for it.
And crucially, I think if they were master of it themselves or mistress of it themselves, and in my case, it was a sort of rebellious thing because it was something I wasn't really allowed to do.
How funny.
And also, I wanted company.
Yes.
I had at least an hour to kill before everyone else got up, and I just put something on. And when you put the needle down, and you've got a symphony orchestra that's playing there, you just think, "Hey, this is fun."
Because it's huge.
It's huge, and it's mine, and it's so grown up, and it's at my command almost.
Well, the way you describe it is the opposite of what you would later sort of come to feel about it being a bit geeky or other kids not thinking it's cool. Well, you're making it sound really cool.
It was cool,
of course,
and its effect is really exciting. And the first time I then saw a symphony orchestra playing, many years later. My jaw just hit the floor. I've got goosebumps even talking about it now, just thinking that, bloody hell, this thing, this massive crowd of people, they were all playing at the same time. They've all got the same thing in front of them, and they're all doing. I mean, and that's what makes that noise.
Yeah.
And that noise I thought was just one thing. Turns out it's about 5 things playing at the same time.
It is magic.
It's really magic. It's really exciting. So it's something to this day. Well, we might, if there's time, we might get onto it. But it's my.
Of course we will. And actually, for fans of this, for fans of Full Disclosure, you looked very like. So I interviewed Natalie Haynes earlier this week, who is 4 years behind you, I think, at Cambridge in the Footlights and what have you. And she described seeing Diana Rigg in Medea when she was about 14. In exactly the same way that you just described your goosebumps and talking about music. So these cultural moments that have epic heft. They really do.
But I think at that age also you're looking. I mean, all the way through from when you start to click in as a sort of young person, around sort of 7 or 8, I think probably, and right up to your mid-20s, I should think. You're just so hungry, and you're gonna suckle at anything that offers you whatever feels like great sustenance.
There's that film, a Short Circuit, about the robot that achieves consciousness and just runs around going, more input. Well,
yeah, exactly. That's it. Exactly that. Yeah, that was from last year, wasn't it?
I think they did a remake last year.
Yeah.
I prefer the original.
Yeah.
Were you precocious enough to have favourites, or did you just love all of it?
I was precocious enough to have favourites. Beethoven symphonies, they were all there. There was a great box set of them. The only sadness was side 1 of the 7th Symphony had a scratch on it, so I could only get to know the 3rd and 4th movements of that one. But I've made friends with the first 2 in the interim. But then Gilbert and Sullivan was a massive thing. I remember going to see them. That's when I first saw an orchestra play live.
Wow. The
Theatre Royal in Newcastle.
Right. And
that was exciting anyway. I mean, we sat right up in the gods because they were the only tickets my cheapskate could have got. So we were up there looking down. I mean, it was very exciting. And, just being so high up and seeing so many people. And there was the orchestra, you sort of just see the strings of it and the conductor. And the orchestra started playing. They played the overture. And I remember the curtain just going up, whipping up on this Venetian scene, the gondoliers. And it was so bright, and it was so colourful, and so full of movement, and this extraordinary opening chorus, full of really beautiful harmonies that just... And I was just in an ecstasy watching that, thinking, I'm not sure I've experienced anything as exciting as this. It was like a moving train of brilliant things.
Were there any stirrings of the future performer? Were early stirrings?
Undoubtedly.
Right.
I think undoubtedly. I think also they had come through... Because being Northumbrians and being... I don't know if I mean it is still very much there, but certainly in the 70s in Northumberland there was a very strong folk thing, and I mean not folk in inverted commas thing, but a folk. We are the communities of Northumberland are still very much. They still have a really proper, vibrant folk tradition. It goes on. People write songs all the time. You can go and hear beautiful folk concerts. And you hear a tune and think, oh, I must look that one up. I'm not sure I know that one. And at the end of it, they'll say, that was written by Gavin. And Gavin goes, hey, and you think, oh, I see. Oh, of course, yes, it's new. It's new. It's evolving constantly. And there were always songs. There were always, you go to evenings where people would stand up and perform something. We still do as a family. Not always, but we will very often round off an evening will finish with us singing. And they're just great Northumbrian, brilliant songs. Some of them very funny, and some of them incredibly sentimental.
So when you then allowed yourself to dare to dream about the future, jump ahead a little bit, you would have seen yourself in your dreams as a musical performer rather than a theatrical.
I think probably, yeah. I think that was probably. I wasn't quite sure what. I loved.
You played
singing.
all sorts of instruments. So
Well, at that stage, I'm not sure I did. I think I was learning. Mrs. Piper was teaching me the piano in Rothbury. So I used to go once a week there, and I loved piano lessons. That was great, but I wasn't sure that was necessarily going to
set you on the road to stardom.
Not sure.
And so, I presume school was a relatively straightforward business for you.
It was, yeah. Village school, Rothbury, which was lovely. The sort of Church of England.
And then prep school at 7. Traditional prep school, but you were a day boy, I think.
No, I wasn't. I was a boarder.
You boarded at 7.
Yeah,
right.
It was an hour away.
Okay.
And it was weird because our village school, which I really loved, was there was an experiment that was done in the 70s in various schools. I'm not sure it was universal, where kids were taught to read ITA, the initial teaching alphabet, and our school had been singled out for this. They thought, well, Rothbury, Northumberland, let's try it there. I mean, what harm can it do? So we weren't taught to read normal written English. We were taught to read this sort of curious phonetic thing. I
don't know about this.
And all our books, including sort of Ladybird books, and all the stuff we read in school was all in ITA. And to this day, my brother can't spell for toffee.
Because of this?
Because of this. My sister really struggles with it. So it was a
disaster.
It was a sort of disaster. It didn't work brilliantly. My mum had got wise to it by this point and had sort of taught me to read sort of grown-up English alongside.
Because she'd seen the damage it had done to your siblings.
She'd seen it. It hadn't been an unmitigated success. So there we are. It was kind of it was timely, I think. Awful. I mean, really. I mean, a wrench like. You've boarded. You'll presumably know what that.
It's extraordinary to people who haven't done it.
Yeah.
And the more you see their shock and bewilderment, the more you question what the hell everybody was thinking. But it was just normal.
And yet I eventually loved it. I mean, I don't know if there's an element of Stockholm syndrome in there.
No, well, you have little choice but to love it. Really.
You have to love it.
Yeah, of course.
And I did. I ended up adoring it. And everything began then. I mean, you were into a curriculum which previously it hadn't. Maybe we were at Rothbury School. It never really felt like it. But you were suddenly on you had sort of milestones you had to pass, and there were people who were absolutely determined that you were going to get from here to there this term, and you're going to get from there to there. And so suddenly you are. I don't know. Even my sense of time before 1977 September was a kind of nebulous. It was just a sort of lovely meld of colours and just bits and pieces, and the occasional things they stick out. And then suddenly from then, I can pretty much say which month or certainly which term anything happened from that point on in my life. I can pinpoint it. That was that. That happened then.
And you flourished. I know your music was very much encouraged by the headmaster's wife, who sounds like a rather lovely figure. It makes a big difference to. Prep schools are bleak places potentially, and any touch of warmth, particularly feminine warmth, is 10 times more valuable than it is in other contexts.
Completely, and you flourish under it as well. And they become the things. I mean, it's amazing how you learn how to look for rewards, and the little sweet spots in your term are going to get you through. Yes, I think I did flourish. I was very short-sighted. I didn't discover that until my second year there.
Okay.
And I'd gone in into quite into a set that was way above my actual abilities, and I was floundering and plummeted quickly, and they moved me down a year.
That's brutal as well for a 7-year-old.
Yeah.
Again, it's
I know
the hard knock life.
God, it really is. I mean, it was extraordinary, and yet I once sort of took it fairly equably, and you think, well, I'm probably right.
I'll be back.
Then we were. I remember we would go. Our summer holiday every year was in Ireland, so we'd go up from Northumberland. You'd cut across to Stranraer, get the ferry across. It was just heaven. And I remember one journey on travelling to Ireland. My mum had discovered that my brother couldn't really see the registration number of the lorry in front, and she was saying, "Can you?" My sister absolutely could read everything. Zana, and I was going, lorry? And it was, so off we went to opticians before we went back to school, massively short-sighted. So glasses arrived.
And that improves everything.
Oh,
you get back to
everything.
school and you can see the blackboard and you
can see everything.
keep up with the...
It was incredible.
What were you good at apart from music?
I was good at English. I was eventually good at most things. I was very good at Latin. That was the thing I really enjoyed. Very, very logical and very strictly.
Puzzle and part poetry, Latin.
It is really, yeah. It is exactly that. It's sort of cryptic and satisfying. And actually brilliantly taught by this. I mean, God, if I look back over the dramatis personae of the staff room at a Northumbrian prep school in the 70s, yes. I mean, yeah, bloody hell, what a melange. There were some brilliant people in there, but we had this
some eccentric
psychopath who used to teach us Latin. Who would just hurl board rubbers. Yeah. If he thought someone wasn't paying attention,
at full speed. This is a lump of wood. It's not a sponge. I don't want anyone to get the wrong idea.
No, lump of wood with a bit of felt woven into it. It was. There was. You had no choice but to learn. But yeah, it was good. Once the brutality, and actually, I sort of trace some of my phobias and weird quirks of personality. They inevitably, I think, all probably go back to that time, that first year, particularly at prep school.
Were you beaten?
I don't think I ever particularly was. I was threatened once with the cane.
Right, because they're very different schools. I mean, everyone uses it as a generic term, but some of them are hideously violent. And
some
others,
of them were.
Others less so.
I was slippered once, though.
Right.
Really, really unfairly, yeah.
So you didn't live in fear then? A lot of people in those schools sometimes do live in a form of fear.
I don't know. I mean, I have... Yeah. My default position on other people generally is to be initially quite scared of them.
Is it? Okay.
I have a fear of...
Yeah.
One expects the worst somehow of people, and it's always such a lovely surprise when you discover people are really nice.
Usually.
Yeah, but in 99% of cases,
of course.
You're pulled up occasionally by some, but it means, I mean, in a funny way, I think I'm generally very positively and optimistically disposed. And I'm sure it's probably because day-to-day life is always so much nicer than I think I might have imagined it when I was 7.
I wonder why that is then.
I don't know why.
School was nice. It wasn't.
School was okay, but I think the other boys were eventually they were great.
Sure, but there's always.
I think you have a fear of what other people are, which
what's
far
going to
exceeds.
Happen next.
Yeah,
it was a form of hypervigilance, isn't it? In a way?
I think that's right.
What is going to happen? And there was a bit of a trauma when it's quite a story. This I was already thinking about casting that melange of teachers in but then the headmaster's wife and the headmaster broke up, and you no longer had your muse, your musical.
I came back. Yeah. Easter term.
Was it?
Of course, it's Easter term. Always Easter terms when terrible things happen. I came back. Hey. And then I'm not sure it was even made clear until 2 or 3 days in, and suddenly there was no Mrs. Dakin. She'd gone. She'd had enough of the terrible man. I mean, I think he was a terrible man.
And this was a very big deal for you.
I mean, it was the end of... She ran a choir there.
Yes.
And she ran it in such a way that everybody wanted to be part of it. It was brilliant. There was no sense of anybody feeling that music wasn't for them. There was certainly no sense of music being a slightly effete pursuit for, oh, I'm not going anywhere near that. Everybody wanted to be in the choir because Mrs. Dakin was fabulous. And she would have this big tin of sweets, like those sort of toffees, those sort of Quality Street type sweets. And every so often she'd just chuck one towards someone who she thought, oh, well, they'd be good. Oh, who's not had a sweet yet? Oh, you better have one. And in a school where we weren't allowed anything sweet, apart from tuck on Sundays.
Yes.
I mean, mad, after
That's
lunch
the
on Sunday.
That's the corollary to the board robber, isn't it?
Yeah.
So it's almost the two binary that.
Exactly. It depends what you're called. You've got to learn to catch as well as learn to sing.
Exactly that.
Yeah.
I know you feel strongly about this, and I've already picked up on it, and I picked up on it in my research as well about that portrayal of music as being effete, as being something that's not cool, as being something. When did the scales sort of fall from your eyes and you realised that not everybody felt the way that Mrs. Dakin did?
I think when I went to big school, I think that was when suddenly I realised that if you were a musician, you were sort of generally thought to be a bit of a race apart.
Because you weren't a rugby player.
Because you weren't a rugby player, and I really wasn't a rugby player.
Right.
I couldn't wear glasses on the field. That was the point. You can't wear glasses. And if you really are as short-sighted as I am, you don't really see the ball until it's a couple of inches away from you. And so, always enthusiastic, always terrible.
So what was big school? What was that
big
in
school
Edinburgh?
Big school was Durham School.
And you didn't enjoy that?
I did quite enjoy Durham, actually.
So how old were you when you went there?
Well, because
the chronology gets confusing.
It gets terribly confusing. It gets terribly confusing because I did one term, I think, or 2 terms in my prep school with no Mrs. Dakin.
Right.
She'd gone.
Yes.
And everything. It was just awful. I'm afraid it didn't work. And so music had so clearly been my.
So it'd gone for overnight from being a central part of your school, but also the whole school, to just not being there at all.
Just not really being there.
That's awful.
And it was and it wasn't for want of they found a replacement person for her, and she was she gave it her best shot, but she was no Mrs. Dakin was the truth. I'm sorry to say.
So have you been in touch with her?
Oh,
since?
I have.
Oh, good.
Sadly, she's no longer around, Mrs.
Sorry,
Dakin.
but I had the chance to tell her.
I saw her in 2019, and it was lovely to see her.
How lovely!
And I was reconnected with her son.
Oh, that's
who I used
nice.
to know. So I mean, she continues to exert terrific influence. But my mum found this music school in Edinburgh, which was attached to the cathedral, St Mary's Cathedral, and she looked into me possibly going there. So I went to this music specialist school for 2 years, from 11 to 13.
Oh,
and
that's why I got confused, because big school is normally at 13, isn't it, when you finish prep school? So your mum really sort of realised that you were in need of a major intervention.
Yeah, exactly.
And found this school. So you are now a chorister.
So I was a chorister, and I was at this extraordinary school. There were only about 40 pupils there, ranging from about 9 to 18. And they were all these astonishing Scottish musicians from all over the place. I mean, there was a brilliant woman there called Carol Gould, who was in love with a piano. She was in love with the Steinway 805 that's in the Queen's Hall. And it was her, so much so that if you went up into the room where we all taught French, she'd written 805, 805, 805 all over the desk.
Wow.
I know. She had 2 twin loves. One was Vladimir Ashkenazi. The other one was the Steinway, I don't know, chassis number 805, whatever it is, was just, she thought was, and so she was given special dispensation to go and rehearse, so she would practice on the piano in the Queen's Hall. And then there came this great moment when Vladimir Ashkenazi came to play at the Usher Hall in Edinburgh, and he'd requested a Steinway, and not the one that they had at the Usher Hall, but he would like the Steinway from the Queen's Hall. And so it was moved from the Queen's Hall to the Usher Hall. So Ashkenazi himself, her other love, and sweetly, the Queen's Hall said to her, "Would you like to travel with the piano?" Oh. And so Carol. Anyway, that was the sort of. It was terribly exciting and full of brilliant eccentrics
and utterly indulging passion and enthusiasm and love.
Exactly,
utterly unquestioning indulgence.
Absolutely right.
That's crucial.
We thought we were kind of the kids from Fame. That was our era.
That's lovely.
To an extent, we were, and to have gone from the sort of the kind of Victorian prep school. I mean, genuinely, someone from the 19th century could easily have gone to my prep school and would probably have thought it was a bit old-fashioned. It was, and I went from there to Edinburgh, where suddenly we'd have to wear a uniform. We could, I don't know, it was very, very relaxed.
And did it end because your voice broke? or is that a
It
bit
ended
too...
because my voice broke, and I think my parents were quite keen that I shouldn't. I think you're narrowing your horizons quite a lot. I think,
Yes,
by
that's
staying
true.
in music school.
So they wanted you to have a sort of broader palette.
Yeah, I think so. I think they just wanted me to have had the benefit of that.
And how did that feel? I don't know if you saw it. You know when you watch things as a kid and you've got like these weird ghost memories of them. But do you remember the dramas that were done by Disney? And you'd have the fairy going around the castle, but they were actual films. They weren't cartoons. And there was one about, I think he was in the boys' choir or the Swiss boys' choir.
Yeah.
And his voice broke during the interval. And it was, I just remember the
No,
Jeopardy.
I
I
didn't
had
see
no
that.
musical
Yeah,
talent at all,
yeah.
still don't. But the drama of it was just extraordinary. And it
Yeah.
literally broke. And one of his friends had to, because if he didn't perform, he wouldn't be able to go on the trip. I forget the Jeopardy. But one of his friends did it and he mimed on the stage. I mean, it was a big deal when your
Yeah.
voice broke. You ceased to
Big
be.
deal.
I mean, was it traumatic? Did it, or were you
No.
ready to move on?
Oh, definitely. I mean, the
Okay.
great thing for boys is there's a lot of discussion about this, and I mean, because I'm very involved with lots of choral music things
Yes.
at the moment, and people always say, well, you mustn't talk about. I don't think it's handy talking about voices breaking.
No.
It's a very sensitive time for boys. And then when you ask boys, they go, nah, it's fine. No, it's fine. Go, we like it because it basically means. Well, we get a deeper voice. And,
There's other stuff
there's
going
so
on.
there's so many compensatory, exactly, other things that and so. I think
You're
by and
exactly
large,
right. Of course
I
it
think
is.
choristers embrace it.
And you know it's coming.
They know it's coming, and it's a sign of all sorts of other good things.
I got cast as one of the sisters in King Lear in the term before we performed it. I went home for the break, and my voice broke. And I came back and I got recast
Goneril
as
suddenly
Kent.
had- Oh, really?
They had to recast
Yeah.
the entire play. And you're right. It wasn't in any way kind of momentous.
No one
So
really
you get to Durham. You're on
Yeah.
a music
Yeah.
scholarship. When do you first sort of make people laugh on a stage? Is that still
At
years
Durham.
hands? That's here.
At Durham.
Right. Okay.
And I think, and it happens. It's the same. I think for so many people, impressions.
Right. Yes.
And impressions. This is why I think music and comedy they share so many things.
yes,
I think if
of
you've got a
course.
good ear for music, you've got a great ear for comedy, and vice versa. Actually, a really good. I think somebody with a fantastic comic sensitivity would make a great conductor. Great conductor. That's why Sue Perkins did such a cracking job conducting.
interesting.
But I think it's right because you have such a good sense of landscape as a comedian. It's one of the things you learn. I mean, also because you're hungry. You're hungry to get the best effect out of everything you're looking at, and it's not necessarily just laughter.
No.
You
Pathos. And
yes,
all of it,
exactly.
yes.
But probably if you're good at comedy, you know not to overplay the pathos, and you know when to sort of to
You're
hold
making
back.
it sound like an instrument.
Well, it is really. I mean, good comedy is absolutely an instrument, and there's nothing worse than hearing a great script imperfectly
Absolutely
delivered.
mullered. So what happened? When did you first get the taste? What was it?
I think it was. Well, actually, I tell you exactly when it was. It was the summer of our. It was the summer of my first year. A friend of ours their daughter was running the Cambridge Footlights tour, and the Footlights. I don't know if they still do. I imagine they still do. They tour all over the country every summer, and they would come up to Newcastle to the Playhouse Theatre, and my mother had got tickets for that, and we went to watch the Footlights, and it was astonishingly good. I mean, maybe it wasn't, but I thought it was the best thing I'd ever seen. Funniest and most. We kept our program. I've still got the program. It was called A Hawaiian Cheese Party, and it starred Morwenna Banks, Neil Malarkey, Rob Harley.
Wow.
I mean, Nick Hancock. I mean, just astonishing.
And
There they all
completely
are.
original material.
Completely
as well, which
original. Yeah. And it was lovely to watch, and lovely to just see people being silly as a
And
profession.
when did you say to yourself, I think I'd like to have a go?
I
at
think in
this?
the interval.
Yeah,
I think that was it. Yeah, I think that was.
and you did.
And I did. I made good on it. And I that was when I thought actually comedy I think is really where I would love to go. I had a burning love of drama as well, so I did a lot of acting, but comedy and particularly sort of collecting characters and collecting voices.
And you would allow yourself to think of that as a potential career, even as you were heading into your A levels, or
To dream of it, yeah.
Okay,
I
and
think
mum
to
and dad
dream
would
of
have
it.
still felt about that as they did about music, that it was possibly
think-
narrowing your.
I mean, they're remarkably laissez-faire. My
Are they?
parents actually, I think they were always delighted by my more
That's
wayward.
nice. They didn't want you
aspirations.
didn't want you to go into medicine
No,
or follow
no.
your mum. Your mum was a magistrate. I think.
No,
So you
yeah.
could have been a lawyer.
Yeah.
None of that.
None
No
of that.
pressure.
No pressure
Quite
at all.
nice then to have
It was
that freedom.
lovely. I mean, they were
rattling
really.
around.
I mean, I think they'd always said later on, actually, when I did give it a whirl, they'd said, look, well, give it a couple of years, see what happens, and if it, we can always make other plans.
Yes.
I mean, they were very, very. I mean, I had to support myself, obviously. So there were. I earned during my holidays and things.
So we jumped ahead a bit, but
Sorry.
we're good. No, I like jumping all over the place. But I do want to leave some time to talk about your new adventures as a novelist. But so we'll hop to Cambridge. Did you go there on a music scholarship as well?
I did. Yeah.
Is it a very rude question to ask whether you'd have got there on academics alone?
I think it's fair to say I probably would have struggled to get it
Okay.
on academics. Having said that, though, I know there were other people who auditioned with me who didn't make the academic cut. So
so
there
you
clearly
had to-
was a
yeah, there was a bar.
There was a bar, but I think they were
So if Pavarotti was as thick as mince, he wouldn't necessarily have got into that.
I think they would sort of faintly look the other way and go, I think that's probably fine. The guest of honour at the choir dinner every year was always the admissions tutor. put it that way.
Gosh, yes,
So,
okay. Because of course the college values the I mean at Trinity it's absolutely historic, isn't it? It's an institution.
Well, it is.
I was listening to something, but I didn't even realise until I was reading up on you. But I was listening to the Trinity College Choir on Spotify only yesterday. It's
there you are.
I mean, it is.
It attracts amazing directors of music.
So how did you do it? What were you juggling internally? Now you'd kind of realised that 2 years in Edinburgh was a bit extraordinary. You were never going to be able to slot back into that kind of world where music was everything, but neither did you want to, because you discovered the joys of comedy and of acting. And at Cambridge did you join the Footlights straight away, or did
No,
you?
no.
Why not? Because you were
Terrified.
nervous. Yeah,
Terrified.
Okay.
And also, I hadn't quite worked out what my time allocation was, because I wasn't reading music; I was reading English.
Sure.
So you have to commit between 12 and 15 hours a week to singing. So it's a lot, and you've got to you've just got to keep yourself. You've got to sort of keep yourself in trim. You've got to make sure you're presentable, your voice is in good shape, you know what you're doing, and all that sort of stuff. So it's that was I had to kind of work out how I was going to balance the work. I mean, that was the extraordinary thing I learnt in that first term was when you'd be set an essay every week, and your supervisor would say, okay, well, here are the books I think you should look at are this, and you have 4 books, and you think, okay, I've got all that time, I'm sure. And then she said, and for secondary texts, maybe I was thinking, what do you mean secondary? Secondary what? Secondary texts? So you'd go up to the library, faculty library, and you'd get out all these books, and you'd put them in your bag, and you think, well, I'll take them, I'll have them, I'll look through them, and you then, but you have to sort of leave a couple of days to write your essay. I mean, it was really, I found the reading really hard. I'm a very slow and gormless reader. I mean, I think my lips move when I read.
Your finger on the page.
It's not something
You can blame it on ITA.
I've never thought to do that.
There it is, you see. That's, but you're being characteristically modest. You're at Cambridge, you're a star performer in the choir, you're covering your bases academically, and then in your final year, the lure of the grease paint becomes irresistible.
Yeah, it did.
There's an audition process for Footlights, I think.
I think if you start in the first year, what happens is you literally have to go into this room. I don't know if it's still there, but underneath the Cambridge Union, there's the cellars there, which was the lair of the Cambridge Footlights, and always just had that sort of terrible sort of mildewy. You didn't want to know where it was coming from, but and that's where all what they would call smokers would be held there, which were terrific. That was the first time I ever clapped eyes on Ben Miller, who was a very impressive fellow. But we'd have to go and audition there, and there'd be a panel of maybe 4 or 5 senior Footlights who would be people you had seen and laughed at in these smokers, and they would sit there
looking at you,
and they'd look at you, and they'd say, "All right, make us laugh." And you'd then have to come up with something.
What did you
I
do?
was spared this.
Oh, you didn't have to
Because
audition.
I didn't. I by the time I got around to it, it's a coward's way in. I luckily had enough friends who I'd acted with and done other bits and pieces.
And so you did sketches.
So I did sketches. I wrote and performed sketches and sort of monologues and things.
And how do you know whether you're any good at it? I mean, obviously the laughter from the audience is a bit of a giveaway, and peer respect as well.
Yes.
But because you need a bit of a fillip to think, okay, I might actually have a crack at this outside of university.
I think you have to. I think part of what the Footlights does, I think part of the reason why the Footlights is so brilliant, why any of those university comedy clubs keep producing impressive alumni, is because you just get all that crap out of your system while you're at university, and you're learning all the time. The sort of the comedy colostrum gets out the system, and the milk starts to flow. I think once you've sort of got that out, and I think in your third year you're beginning to get some sense of how these things should go. I think crucially we used to overwrite appallingly. No one ever told you about editing, and the great gift when you're coming up with comedy is just take out, and you have I'm afraid to kill some of your plumper babies and think that's going to be, but I love that bit, and think, well, no, it's got to go because it's much better without it. So
And how do you know? So I mean, we're moving into the realms now where you become known. You come out of Cambridge, move to London, share a flat with a variety of other kind of aspiring talents, like Jez Butterworth. I didn't realise you'd share a flat with him. So you at this point, I presume you could have gone all in on the acting or the comedy, or were you always going to try and keep both plates spinning?
Yeah, I was going to try and keep both plates spinning. Acting, I was giving my all to, and it kind of went okay. We did a play. There were four of us, little four-hander. In my first, so I moved up to London in whatever it was, 90. Actually, no, that's in sort of January '93, and a friend of mine, Crispin Whittell, wrote this really killingly funny play called "Killing Him," all about Black Wednesday and leaving the ERM, and four-hander, Will Keane, fabulous actor, which I went to see playing Iago at the RSC last year, playing Putin in Patriots, as they call it, Jez Butterworth and Nicola Walker. Gosh. So it's just that all of us
You've done all right, haven't you?
landed on our feet as a result of that. I think almost exactly as a result of that play. I mean, all sorts of other wonderful things happened. But
and so, in pursuit of poetic moments in the interview, then we've got the Gilbert and Sullivan. We've got the Footlights performance in Newcastle that made you feel this was possible. Is the collaboration or somebody decided that you and Ben Miller should be working together, writing together? Is that of similar significance in this?
That is of huge
artistic development.
Jez was our matchmaker.
I didn't know.
So
that.
Jez said, "You've got to work with Ben," and I knew Ben. I was very scared of Ben.
He's 4 years older than you.
Yeah, he's 4 years older.
Bold. I mean, peroxide hair, and the whole shebang,
and an earring.
Yes,
he was. I mean, Ben was just undoubtedly cool. I was so not. But we met and we sort of got together and we started writing bits and pieces. I was doing a comedy club in Notting Hill called TBA with all manner of people. The Gate Theatre.
I went there.
Yeah. Did you?
Yes, I did. Only once or twice, but because I had a mate who lived around the corner, so we went in there a couple of times.
Wow.
Small world.
Oh, my goodness, yeah. So, yeah, there were all kinds of people who did that. And that was, well, as you'll know, late on Saturday nights. And we'd gone to the club there and said, do you think, could we have your theatre after your main show comes down on a Saturday night? And we'll split the door with you. And they said, yeah, why not? And that was it. It was as simple as that. I said, yeah, of course you can. So this is what I always tell anyone who says, well, I'm interested in the career in comedy. Have a go. Talk to some local fringe theatre and see if you can get an opening there.
Yeah, and you'll be surprised. People are often surprised by how few people actually bang on doors and make these offers and ask these, because the worst that can happen is that they say, no, fuck off.
Yeah, exactly. And in most cases, they'll say, yeah, why?
Yes,
yeah,
brilliant. Why wouldn't they? And Edinburgh, I mean, a classic kind of progression now through Edinburgh and nominations, and then telly comes calling.
First Edinburgh, Ben and I, having been sort of, we were the masters of all we surveyed at TBA because we were related to nearly all of the audience, and tiny audience, and they were. We sort of built up a following there. We went up to Edinburgh in '94, thinking that we were everything we touched was just going to turn to gold, and it so fabulously didn't. We did a show there that the Independent, the only person who bothered reviewing it was the Independent. The Independent said Armstrong Miller have invented a new kind of comedy with no laughs whatsoever. And they were kind of right, because we had this thing. We were very anti-punchline. We wanted to do stuff. Our ideal sketch would basically be very tightly observed pastiche. So it was all about us showing our acting chops, really, so we like to think.
And that's why the relationship is so important, because if you're not being embraced warmly by the establishment, the fact that you both rate it and each other is what keeps you going.
Absolutely.
So that mutual respect is enough to sustain.
It is, actually. And it is us against the world.
Yes.
And as long as we believe in it, as long as we find it funny, and we really did. Steve Coogan came that year. He came and watched it. We had no idea he'd been in, and got in touch with us that autumn to say, just loved.
Pretty good indicator.
Just loved that
It's
show,
not a bad
which is
validation.
good. So that was nice. Took 95 out, and 96 we came back.
And rocked it.
Yeah.
And the rest is history. Up until this rather pleasant point in life now where you can pick and choose, and we've talked about Classic FM, your performing career as a musician, you sort of resurrected post Armstrong and Miller. You returned to that as a baritone whose enthusiasm is infectious, both as a performer and as an evangelist almost for the genre, for the music. And Pointless, another big game changer, actually, because it delivered a completely new direction, somewhat unexpectedly. I think you were friends with Richard Osman at Cambridge.
That's right, yeah.
How do you pick your next project now? What do you do? How do you decide what you're going to do?
Well, I think the next project is music-based.
I don't mean literally. I mean when you've got this array of choices in front of you,
I see what you mean.
What makes you sort of think that's what I want to do?
Yes, it's an interesting, and I'm lucky enough to have lots of different horses to ride, as it were.
That's what I mean.
And I really enjoy all of them.
It's a lovely position to be in.
It is a lovely position to be in.
And you're one of those people who actually appreciates how lovely a position it is.
Well, I do. I really do. I mean, it's a total joy. It does. I mean, the commute. We live in Oxford, which is I forget why, but we. And I mean, the commute was a sort of an interesting thing to add into our lives. But there we are. The upside of it is that we get to live in Oxford, which is great.
And you have added writing. I mean, which actually, given the conversation we've just had, it feels like a very natural progression, not only to move into writing books, but into writing books for young adults, set in Durham.
Yeah, set in the Northeast, and based around storytellers, and based around the
Celtic
folk
tradition
culture.
Almost, isn't it?
It is almost, isn't it?
Yes, I think so.
And it's, the storytellers in our country were always either sort of Welsh. That was a sort of the great bardic, the oral storytelling that came from Wales, or from the west of Scotland, or from Ireland. Actually, I mean, Ireland's source of so much, and actually also pretty much follows the path of Christianity, actually, through Scotland into Northumberland and down. So I've invented this world for the book of Evenfall. It is a series. There's a second one coming, and there'll be a third, around this sort of ancient, I was sort of pre-Northumbria, the old kingdom of I can't remember what the hell it was called. Burna, I think it's called. Anyway, but I don't know how you pronounce it. But this ancient kingdom of the Northeast, and actually they were the sort of the green man. They were these. The storytellers lived in the woods and only really came out in the spring, and they were there till the harvest, and then they'd sort of melt away back into the woods, and they're sort of almost semi-mythical, but they've been there and they've never gone. They now live among us, and they're normal people, but they have this sort of preternatural ability to tell stories beautifully, and how they are in fact the most powerful force on earth.
Is this the Order of the Evening? Is the group?
It is the Order of the Evening,
and your young hero discovers that he is of that.
He is
lineage.
of that. He is of that lineage, exactly, and he is of that power as well. He has this extraordinary power, and it makes perfect sense. Actually, it all adds up. And there's this one. He's rediscovering hidden underground sort of temples and things like this, sort of that belong to his antecedents, and their powers have been curtailed, and they've been ruthlessly they've been murdered throughout history, including, as it turns out, he discovers that his mother, who died in an accident when he was 5, this was no accident. I don't want to give too much away, but he discovers that such is their power that they are forever being. There are evil forces that want to curtail them because they represent.
This has got the lot, hasn't
the
it?
balance.
This is right up my straw.
Oh,
what? Tell me about the moment that seed sprouted the very first time when you sort of began to think, if indeed you did, it may have been a more.
Lots of things in a funny way. Evening, funnily enough, I always loved the idea, and I've never looked this up, but I imagine we have the word evening because it's the evening out between day and night. It's where light and shade.
I guess it must be.
It's the evening.
If it isn't, I don't want to know. I don't.
Well, I think, and I just love the idea of that, and I sort of pegged that away somewhere, and then I wanted therefore there to be this thing called the evening, and to be this righteous sect of people whose job it was to even things, to they were always looking for balance. They were looking to keep things, to stop humanity from going nuts in one direction or another. They were there just to sort of, as like sort of pressure release. And that was that. So that was the origin of it. And then I was filming in Rome, doing this beautiful thing for BBC One called Hidden Rome, which I did about 10 years ago. And we were underground. We were exploring. You'd go through this sort of really unremarkable sort of steel door in a street, the kind of thing that has, sort of gig posters and, club nights plastered all over it. And the guy would just open it up, padlock, and he's, through you come, and you go down this little spiral staircase, and suddenly you're in the Aqua Virgine. You're in this extraordinary. This is the original aqueduct that came in. Agrippa designed it before the birth of Christ, and you're walking along this beautiful thing that runs for 20 kilometres up to the northeast of Italy, of Rome, bringing water in from a spring to above the Spanish Steps, and you're thinking, blimey, this is extraordinary. I don't know. That was when I suddenly thought, right, okay, this has got to be part of it as well. So there are sort of this is another sort of factor of the world.
Yeah.
But it's. Yeah, that was, I think, when I suddenly thought, right, there's too much here that excites me.
And final question, I mean, was it always going to be a youthful here? Because, I mean, you've described it, and I don't want this to sound unkind. People listening to what you've just said will think Dan Brown, perhaps, or that kind, although you're a better writer than he is. What made you think I'm going to aim it at that age group,
because it was when our children were that sort of because they were going through that age group, and I really wanted them to have a sort of slightly more contemporary thriller. I wanted them to have
there's no better thing. I wrote it for my children.
Yeah,
it's just
well,
lovely,
there we are.
Isn't it?
I wanted them to have a book that at the end of each chapter they'd say, "Oh, can we have another?"
And did it work?
Can we have another? Yeah, I think so. Hooray!
And the paperback is out now, Evenfall, the Golden Linnet. And I think, because one of our colleagues told me, you've just finished the next one.
I think by tomorrow.
Or you're supposed to have just finished the next one.
Yeah, I'm that close
Writer's
to it.
curse. We haven't talked about ambition at all. You don't sound like someone. You haven't come across as someone who ever sort of thought, I want this, I want that, I want to tick that box. You don't have any sort of things you'd really like to do.
I believe strongly in happiness. And that's always my wish. If you're ever granted a wish, I'm not sure we're ever meant to tell people this, but if you're ever granted a wish, in one of those things, my wish is always, can we all be happy, please? There we are.
That'll do. Alexander Armstrong, thank you.
Thank you.